Also, if I sound sniffly, it's because the ragweed is in full bloom here. No good.
I got that on recording, by the way. So that was
Right?
rich.
You should just use that as the intro.
That would actually be awesome. I like that.
What is up, everyone? So glad that you could join us. Today, I am going to impart to you some great wisdom on strength training for women. Okay, maybe not exactly, but I am joined by two amazing people. I'm joined by Amber Boyer, our co-host. She is a personal trainer. She has a lot of advice for this particular topic. And we're also joined by my beautiful wife, Bethany Beazley, which is actually strange to say, Bethany Beazley. I'm just not used to saying it. It's like sweet or something like that.
Sweetheart. Yeah, you never use my real name.
Yeah.
So if he uses my real name, I know we're getting really serious about something that's not going to be fun to discuss.
So I am so glad that you guys could both join us. We can have this conversation. This will be really, really fun to talk about strength training. I'm going to ask you guys questions and I'm going to get out of the way, even though I have my 2 cents that I'll sprinkle in, but this should be a really fun conversation. So we're going to start with this very first question. It's actually for Bethany, and Amber, you could jump in here too, because I know actually you haven't heard Bethany's story, right?
I haven't. I'm very excited about today's conversation, just to get to know her more and hear how she got into strength training and her health journey, all that jazz.
So I met her when she was like this Olympic power lifter. So
that's great.
The first question I was going to ask is like, what got you into strength training? So it's kind of like, what's your story to that point?
Sure. So I've always kind of like, ever since I was like aware of who I was as a person, I've kind of wanted to be skinnier. And it was, 90s, early 2000s. And that was just the thing,
Yeah.
Everyone wanted to be super rail thin. And so I was very ignorantly kind of trying to work out in any way I could. And I'm talking like I was 11, 12, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for a really super long bike ride. And I would, or I saved up my money and I bought a Pilates DVD off of an infomercial because they were like, you're going to get like super long and thin dancer's legs. And I was like, I didn't realize you don't really get dancer's legs unless you're a dancer,
Right.
But that was my whole goal in fitness. I just wanted to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And so I ended up adopting a lot of really just unhealthy and unsustainable exercise practices. And then I would, fall off the wagon and feel all guilty and then try again. And that really just kept going until Jon and I were engaged. And then we were hanging out obviously a lot more, and I would go to the gym with him. We were hanging out a lot more.
This is good.
I would go to the gym with him, and I'd just be like, on the treadmill or running on the track, or maybe try a couple of the like ab machines or whatever. But I wasn't brave enough to really try anything, quote unquote real, anything that was really going to be super strenuous. And I think, honestly, the way I grew up, it was kind of viewed as unfeminine.
Yes.
Girls could be runners, girls could be maybe into gymnastics. But if you were going to lift heavy weights, man, that's William's feeding pump.
Oh.
Go do what you...
All right, 4:20.
Go do what you got to do.
I'm just going to turn it off. It's fine. He's fine, but...
You got to pay attention to it. That's
Say
why
again?
we have editing.
Exactly. So I marked it at 4:20.
Perfect.
So I'll know when we start back.
I'm going to zip my way to the side here and grab it. You missed that.
What was this?
You missed it.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry. I was like typing away.
Yes, I'm so glad she brought up the whole unfeminine thing. This is good. Also,
I gotta find a way to get that little clip in there. This is really good.
I'm winded from going up and down the stairs super fast.
Because you haven't done. I didn't know about the dance thing. You never told me about the dance thing. I feel like there's a part of you I don't know.
oh
Oh, no.
all the things that will come out.
Okay, so I was saying that there were certain types of exercise that were considered unfeminine. And
Yes.
if you were going to lift heavy, that was just a necessity. That was a masculine thing to do.
Mhm.
And if you ever needed, if you ever needed something heavy to be lifted or moved, you know, go call your brothers, go call your dad. And it's like, no, actually, you know, I could probably do that if, you know,
Right.
but anyway, John and I got engaged and we started hanging out at the gym more. And then even after we got married, you know, we would go to the gym together just about every day. And eventually he was able to coax me over into the free weight section. And I remember I was so insecure.
Yeah.
I was so scared to be there with all these big burly guys at Gold's Gym. And then these girls that looked like they had been lifting forever. Like they looked like models to me. And I'm just like, I don't belong here. So I remember crying like mid-set. I like put the weights down and I'm just crying. I'm like, I want to go home.
Yeah.
And I said, no, don't be a wimp. No, I didn't do that. It was a joke.
I'm sure it kind of threw you off though.
What's that now?
I'm sure like Bethany's like emotional reaction kind of like was not what you expected, right, John?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't remember the meltdown. Actually, I'm like sitting here thinking, did you melt down?
Oh, I totally did.
Let's keep the story in. It sounded great.
We were doing squats and I couldn't get the form down. Like the double hinge movement just felt so odd to me to do like a good clean squat. It felt so weird. And then there's people on squat racks on either side and they're doing it right. And I'm like really struggling with a teeny tiny bit of weight. And
you know what? Thoughts are coming back now.
You remember?
I'm starting to remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was really, as my relationship with John grew, so did then my interest in his interests. And it's really been honestly a huge step forward in my health journey, getting into that type of training.
Yeah.
Amber, you should share your story a little bit because it's some similarities there.
Yeah. There are a lot of similarities. Specifically, Bethany, when you mentioned the whole weightlifting not being feminine and like that's what you were taught, that's exactly how I grew up. I remember, I think I was like 12 or 13 years old. I don't remember why I got into exercising. I was just a really active teenager. And I remember my mom literally telling me, it's unfeminine if you pick up more than 10 pounds. And she actually told me I was not allowed to have weights more than 10 pounds.
Wow.
And
Whoa.
Yes. She's like, it's not feminine. You're not a boy. You're not a football player. She's like, you have to keep it lightweight. You want to look nice. You don't want to look like a man. And obviously that really comes from a place of lack of education more than anything, of knowing like it would take a lot for me to look like a man, first of all. And then lack of education on what weightlifting does for a person. And when I got into exercising and stuff like that, it was definitely more on the cardio side because in the early 2000s, that's exactly what women did. Aerobics, classes, Pilates, yoga, running,
Zumba.
Zumba. Oh my gosh, yes. And that's what most people go for because then Hollywood was dictating that women should be rail thin. So that was the mentality. Yeah.
It's Zumba?
Zumba.
Yeah.
Zumba.
It's like dancing.
Is that still around? Is it?
Yeah.
I just haven't seen a class like that. So when you said it, I was like, wait, is that still going?
Yeah.
Should we do a Zumba for the audience?
No.
Just kidding. Oh my.
I can't dance worth beans. What are you talking about? No, the gym I actually work at teaches several Zumba classes through the week. I have tried one.
You
Yep.
want to pop into it?
Yeah.
Our little
Jack, I think, is upstairs. I can hear him on the monitor. He's looking for me.
No, I'm going to go take care
10
of that.
minutes. We'll see if we get through this. Yeah, we can do it.
I was gonna say this works. Like there's a reason that there's editing, and I get it.
Probably like this episode as well as I'll like I don't know if this will make it to YouTube or not because it might eventually. We'll see. We'll see how I can splice it together. Maybe Ian could help us with this endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
But
no, I got you. What all of my story do you want me to tell? Because I want like not bad. Huh?
What was that?
I said, what all of my story do you want me to tell?
I changed to a smile real fast as I looked over at myself. I was like, oh, I look really grumpy. So I changed my expression. As much as you feel like that's like relevant to the discussion, like you don't have to say everything, but just like similar threads that are the same is totally fine.
Yeah. Sounds peachy. Good.
Basically anything, and through all of this, anything that you feel like is a good conversational piece, like, anything like that. Let's see here.
Cool. No, that works. Cause I'll keep it pretty relevant. Yes.
All right. I think you were talking after
the last thing I said.
Zumba.
Yes. Okay, so I'll take it from there. So yeah, so with that, I didn't get into weightlifting really at all until I was like probably about 21, and I still kept the weights pretty light, probably like up to 20s is really what I did. And it wasn't until I actually really got into becoming like a personal trainer that I learned about weightlifting, the benefits that it had. I started working at a gym, and fun fact, I worked out at home for a majority of my life. So I had like weight sets, I had a gym in my basement. And right before I started working for the gym that I'm at is actually when I started going to the gym. So working with anything over 25 pounds was like brand new to me. So this was actually like a year and a half ago. So I've only been working with like heavy weights for a year and a half.
Wow. That's really awesome, actually. Like, so I had phases in this whole journey of different capabilities with different like access to different types of weights. One of the things that I did for a long time after having our first kid, I started lifting with power block dumbbells at home. Those are awesome, by the way. Like they go from 2.5 pounds all the way up to 90 pounds each.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it really did make for me at the time, a good at-home workout. But it really changed when Jon started building a home gym with like actually good quality stuff, like really commercial grade
Rogue
stuff.
Fitness.
Yeah. And that has really helped, having access to like real weights, because one big thing for me is I'm a massive introvert, like big time. And just leaving the house to go to the gym.
How did you all get together?
I tricked him. Really, I did, because I'm one of those like extroverted introverts. So when I get around people, I can act super extroverted and like outgoing, and then I go home and I collapse.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But yeah, working out with really good equipment at home has made a huge difference for me.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Pre-children, though, we used to go to the gym. But then when we started having children, that got a little more complicated.
It really did.
But
yes. Yeah, that's a big one.
Like in the last couple of years, like I've seen you kind of dial in your training, like
Mhm,
in a number of
mhm.
ways, that I think it would be awesome for other women to hear that are listening to this podcast. Like, okay, so you changed from doing cardio light weights to heavy lifting.
Mhm.
We just covered that. You also changed your relationship to food,
Yes.
and you also learned
Mm.
to adapt and sync with your menstrual cycle as well. Just kind of being able to dial in, like, when do I go forward with intensity, back off in intensity, all that kind of things.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask you, how did changing your relationship to food, and I know this isn't directly related to strength training, but we're trying to broaden this a little bit to just include fitness. How did changing your relationship to food help you with your training and mental health?
Yes.
Mm. Good
Okay,
question.
so like I talked about earlier, I had a goal for like from probably age 11 until even just recently of being as small as I possibly could be. So
Mm.
anytime I would choose something to eat, choose an activity to do, whatever, choose an outfit, everything needed to make me look as small as possible.
Mhm.
And so all of my goals revolved around that. And I really developed a very negative and very restrictive relationship with food.
Mm.
Um, the two most common and most well known eating disorders are anorexia and bulimia.
Yes.
And, but the one that I never was diagnosed, but I truly believe if I spoke with a registered diet, wow, I can't say that, a dietitian, a
Mhm.
food person, or a physician about it, I really do feel that I would have been diagnosed with orthorexia at the time. I
Mm.
was obsessed with choosing the healthy options, and
Yeah.
I would agonize over whether or not a bowl of oatmeal was a good meal choice, or
Mm.
whether at Thanksgiving I could have a roll if I was also going to have mashed potatoes, and it was
Yeah.
like, it was super hyper obsessive. And if I felt like I had messed up in any way, I would resort to drinking like a gallon of water within, say, 5 hours, just gulping down as much water as I could.
Oh
I'd be
gosh.
obsessively exercising. So it was very unhealthy.
Yeah.
And I did at one point, um, I dropped a lot of weight before getting pregnant with our first child.
Mm.
Um, Probably dropped into an unhealthy range.
Yeah.
But I was so proud of myself. I was like, I've gotten so low. I haven't been this low in years. And then that same day after stepping on the scale, I went to, like, I think it was a July 4th celebration, and I couldn't be around the food table. I couldn't
Mm.
do it because I thought I'm gonna lose all of my progress. I'm gonna end up gaining a ton of weight just from this one thing. And I remember I had to go inside. Like, I had to walk away from the food table and the picnic. And I was like, okay, something is wrong here. Like, if
Mm.
I can't get together with friends and enjoy a holiday without having a breakdown, like, something
Right.
is wrong. So, the change has happened very, very gradually, and it's gone through many iterations. But basically, I have come to a point where um, I will eat, whatever I am craving,
Yeah.
whether that's spaghetti or a salad, or um, I'm really super into chocolate pudding right now. I don't know why, but I'm just like fixated on
I love
chocolate
that.
pudding. I love it. Um, but depending on what my goals are at the time, I may say, I'm going to have a moderate portion of this instead of having, you know, as much as I can possibly stomach. But it really has given me a lot of freedom to just
Yeah.
say there are no bad foods.
Oh,
There are
that's big.
highly, yeah, like,
Yeah.
because I would attach my moral worth to what I was eating at the time.
Oh. Yeah.
And I would feel like this massive failure if I had an ice cream cone,
Mhm.
And now currently, like right now, I do have a goal of losing some weight. I've after having our last child, the baby weight's hanging on, and that's fine,
Right.
but for me, I would like to lose a little bit of weight. So right now I am paying a little bit more attention to like my caloric load and what I'm taking in, but I'm being
Mhm.
very careful not to exclude anything.
Yes.
And it's really the first time in my life that I have been able to say, I want to have French toast for breakfast. So
And
I'm
you
just
eat it?
gonna, and I eat it and I
Mhm.
love it and it fits,
Mhm.
as long as I'm making sure that everything fits in there. It's great. It's fantastic. And there's been so much freedom with that.
She's so
Mm.
much in a better mood when she has your French toast.
Look,
She's no longer hangry. It's great.
look.
I love carbs
Women and
too.
food. Yeah.
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 Facts.
But for a long time too, I was like, okay, carbs are gonna make me so fat, man.
Yeah.
There's no way I can be I can't even be a serious weightlifter if I'm eating this much carbs. But then I'm
Ooh.
like, actually now, depending on what my workout is,
Mhm.
I will base my food of the day around what my workout's going to be. If I know it's going to be really super hard, that's
You
a
gotta eat
carb
the
heavy
carbs.
lunch. Yeah, because
Yes.
I want to be able to lift the weight. Um, so yeah, I think my mental health has really taken an upturn, recognizing I'm
Mm.
not failing when I eat, something that I enjoy. And then also my training has gotten a lot better. My energy is better. I feel so
Mhm.
much stronger. And I've actually like recently, even during this cutting phase, um, at the beginning, I dropped my calories into a caloric deficit because that was what my goals were at the time. And I realized I was like, okay, one, my mood is really off this first week of the,
Mhm.
change to my calories. And then I also recognized my energy is low. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to lift and some of my warm up sets feel exhausting. Like what is going on? And I ended up bringing my calories back up by about 350 calories
Mhm.
extra. And I saw an immediate change
Yeah.
in my stamina, my ability to lift. But the number on the scale is still gradually ticking down
Yeah.
because what I'm
You're
doing is
still in the deficit.
sustainable. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm still in a deficit, but I'm doing it in a sustainable way that's not impacting my mental health.
And you're
Yeah.
moving a lot too. Like
Yes.
you're doing training, but you're also over 10,000 steps a day. Like,
Typically, yeah.
I
yeah,
was gonna say you got
she's
3 boys to keep up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so it's interesting. So like, and when she was really like, years ago, prior to kids, like just
Mhm.
trying to get really super lean in a way that was unhealthy, like you got really ripped at that
It did.
time.
It
She was
did.
like super. I was actually like, I'm feeling kind of soft over here. She was
That's
super
hilarious.
ripped. I was just like, dang, just it was intense.
Yeah.
But it did change your social life.
Mhm.
It changed the way you viewed yourself and how you related to other people and doing things fun and enjoying them. So that all the other things in life was greatly hindered. And even kind of, if you look at your performance then, I'm talking about like with heavy lifting now, I mean, you're lifting heavier now.
Oh, much heavier. Much
Yeah.
heavier.
So all these other markers are going up. And actually now you're dialing it into where you're getting back, you want to lose some fat and you're getting to where you want to, but it's not toxic. It's not a toxic relationship with food. You're no
Mhm.
longer
Yeah.
like saying these food categories are terrible
Yeah.
type of thing.
And then going off on like, well, it's so and so's birthday, and so there's a cake here, and I'm not going to see another cake like this in probably, 6 months. So I
Yeah.
better eat as much of this cake as possible, and then the cycle just like repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats, and you end
Yes.
up just feeling horrible. So
Mhm.
I read from a personal trainer Her name is Lori King.
I know
And
her. I mean, not
she's
personally, but of her.
I would love to know her in person. But one of the things she talks about is what the ideal body type is. And her mindset, I absolutely love it, because she said, look, my ideal body type is different from yours. She said, I love tracking macros. I love lifting heavy for super long sessions, 4 to 5 times a week. I love, surfing and walking and hiking and running and all this kind of stuff. I love that. And so that's what I put into my quote unquote body type. And so then in return, I get the body type that I have, but I'm living a life that I love. If you live a life that you love, a healthy life that you love, and you're eating things that you want that are healthful, and you're pursuing healthy habits, your ideal body will be a result of that. But if you live a life that you hate, eating food that you hate and doing workouts that you hate, that's not your ideal body. You may have a quote unquote better looking body, and you may be, the ideal physique, but that's not your ideal body because you're not happy.
Right.
And if your life is awful, then the body you've got is worthless if you hate your life.
Exactly.
So there's a balance that it took me a long time to find the balance, and I'm still kind of seeking that out. I have good days and bad days, but I think we all do. Yes.
And especially since we're surrounded by such a culture of you got to be fit, you got to be skinny. And I'm going to be honest with you, the typical Hollywood diet, and I will go and rip diets apart left and right easily right now. I'm actually in working on my nutrition certification, and I'm going to be going back to college to be a dietitian. So I do a lot of reading and research into this, and I'm really glad that you brought up that other eating disorder that people do not, they don't talk about it, because the reason they don't talk about it is, one, lack of awareness, and two, so many women, and sometimes men, I won't disclude them from this, are so obsessive over food. Nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to admit that they don't think that they're enough, that they don't think that they're doing enough, and they don't want people to know that they love food the way they do, because that's shamed in this culture. You shouldn't love food, or if you're even remotely overweight, do you love food too much? And coming from myself, at a young age, I didn't struggle with body issues until I was about 16, which is older than the typical. But I remember being a teenager and starting to track what I was eating. Nobody told me I was fat. My parents were so good when it came to, I know some parents are like, hey, maybe you should lose a little weight, or they restrict their kids eating and things like that without them really knowing it. My mom was never like that, and I'm so thankful for that. But I remember I was attending for the audience, just so you know, I was homeschooled growing up.
Yes.
One of those.
Excuse me?
Oh, me too.
Yeah. But I was attending a homeschool group at that time, and I remember looking around and seeing not only was I 5 inches taller than most of the girls my age, I'm pretty tall, but I was just bigger in general, and by no means was I overweight at all, but I just remember feeling big. And so I started watching what I was eating and all these things, and that morphed into eating 1,200 calories, which is really, really little compared to what I should be eating. Yes. And I remember tracking that for a long time. And I remember feeling overweight in my senior pictures, although I look back at it now and I think I weigh 15 or 20 pounds now than I did my senior year pictures. And I look better now, first of all. But I was like, oh my gosh, how did I think that I was big then? But that lack of eating continued for a little while. And I don't remember if I mentioned this in last week's episode, but my first, when I got engaged to my first year of marriage, it was about a 1.5 year span of time, I had gained 50 pounds. And I had just like stopped like paying attention to what I was eating in general. They call it happy weight. I think it was a lot of happy weight.
Very happy.
It was a little too much happy weight. But there were so many life transitions happening. I just didn't pay attention to it. And then I got into back into like tracking what I was eating and calorie counting. I did calorie counting. Do not recommend. But for the following like 4 years, I was eating about 1,200 calories a day. I did lose weight, yes, but I was literally starving myself. And it wasn't until I got a personal trainer myself that she was like, Amber, no wonder you can't lose weight anymore. Because I had hit a plateau for like a year. And I was like, why can't I get past this 185? Like, what is wrong with me? And she's like, it's because you're eating too little and your metabolism is crap. And so then I had to learn how to up everything. And it took me 3 months of coaching for me to eliminate the habit of eating 1,200 calories. My coach literally made me eat like Rice Krispie treats or rice cakes with peanut butter on them. She was like, Amber, you have got to get this up. And she's like, I know you like Rice Krispie treats, so please eat 2 a day. And I was like, 2 a day? But that's what it took for me to like eat what I was supposed to be eating, because I nailed the protein, I was nailing the fats, but I couldn't get the carbohydrates up because I was afraid of carbs, which is a whole conversation in and of itself. And what was wild is once I nailed down eating the macronutrients or the amount of food that I was supposed to be eating, I actually dropped 15 pounds, like while eating twice of what I had been eating before. Yep.
Wow.
That's scary though. When you start seeing those numbers of like, you know, that size of a serving on your plate, or like, I'm going to go eat again. It's so, you're like, oh my word, I'm going to get so fat. This is horrible. And it's very counterintuitive, especially the way we grew up thinking.
Yes. And it's counterintuitive to what is being taught in mainstream media and in all these stupid magazines from Hollywood.
Did your trainer do like a reverse
diet?
Reverse dieting idea?
Yep.
Okay.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. I really like, we should do an episode on that when we get on like fat loss and going back to maintenance, because sometimes people like do an extreme jump. Yeah. And even if it's back to maintenance, they could gain a little bit. But like, I love the reverse dieting, and the science seems to really back that. I was curious if that's how she did that. That is really super cool. Yeah.
And the mentality shift. It was a huge mentality shift.
So there's this change in relationship to weights. I like to categorize things. This is why I always do this. Yeah. Change in relationship to weights. And then it was kind of like that worked well for a while. But then you really, to take it to the next level, you had to change your relationship to food. And now you're kind of like in this process of, and you've been doing this probably for a couple of years now, I think. But Amber was talking about this last session where dialing in, as a woman thinks about training, she's kind of syncing it with her menstrual cycle. Yes. And trying to dial that in. And Amber said, like, to the level that you're able to dial that in is to the level that you're going to actually optimize your training, strength training in particular, because you can kind of hit this wave of, I don't feel like lifting anything. I'm dead. I'm tired. So has this been your experience? Yes. If not, fight with Amber. That would be cool. A little bit of
No, it truly has. It has been my experience. It's funny because when I first like got on birth control and all this kind of stuff, it was hormonal, take the pill, all this kind of stuff. And I didn't have any necessarily negative side effects, but it masked my awareness of my cycle, really masked it. And it wasn't until after our second kid that I got off of hormonal birth control. And that really, I started recognizing, like, I can feel almost to a T exactly where I am in my cycle. And I started tracking it. I started counting days and all this kind of stuff, and being a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Proactive in knowing where I'm at. And I could tell a definite difference. You know, the ones that everybody jokes about, like, oh, your mood and your cravings and your symptoms and all this kind of stuff. But like, even just my level of energy. And it took a while, because I would be getting ready to hit ovulation, and out of nowhere, I would clean the whole house. I would just like everything. I scrubbed everything, and I'd be out power washing the driveway. Like, what is wrong with me? Why do I have so much energy, and why am I cleaning everything? And then I realized, I'm like, oh, I'm ovulating. Like, I
Isn't
have
that
all this
crazy
energy. I
how it
want to do
affects
it.
you?
Yeah.
Yes.
It totally does. But now, like, I start looking forward to, like, you know, after menstruation ends, and I'm like, okay, I know that next week I am going to be a complete beast with weights.
Facts.
Like, I'm going to be able to lift these things, and I end up getting excited. Like, I can't wait to see how much more can I, you know, how many more reps am I going to be able to do? How many extra sets? Like, and it happens almost every month. Almost every month. And it feels like, honestly, it feels like a superpower, because
Yeah.
like, the poor
I love
guys, they
that.
go in the gym and it's basically the same, maybe a tiny little bit of an increase each couple of weeks. They can bump it up, and it's very predictable and plotting. And for us, it's like, all right, here we go. It's like I'm ovulating, and I am really super powerful right now.
I'm
I
ready
like
to
how she
shock
just turned that into a
everybody.
superpower.
Totally
It is.
If you know it's coming, you can play into it.
Yes.
But then on the flip side of that, when you're like, okay, I am getting ready to go into menstruation, I'm luteal, or is it follicular?
Follicular is right after menstruation. So that's when
Okay,
your estrogen
yes.
levels go up, and that's when you start to build power and you're feeling real good. And then
Yes.
it goes into the luteal phase right after ovulation.
Okay, thank you. I get those flipped. But when I'm going into the luteal phase, and definitely right at the start of menstruation, it's like, it's so much work just to keep the pattern of, like, I have days, especially during menstruation, where I say, I'm going to walk into our gym. I am going to do one exercise. I'm going to warm up, and I'm going to start with some working sets. If I feel horrible after I finish, you know, my warm up and a working set, I can stop. Usually I get through that, and I'm like, okay, I feel fine. I can do this. But I'm not setting any massive goals that week. I'm just like, I'm maintaining, or I might even set aside a workout for the day if I'm feeling really, really awful.
Yeah.
And just go for a walk or take a nap.
Yes. Sometimes you got to take a break.
Sometimes you do. But being aware of where I'm at, it really helps me, one, not try to push myself too hard, but also know when I can push myself. And then it kind of removes that. I mean, you should never have any guilt associated with fitness, working out, eating well, whatever. But it's an extra layer of taking off that guilt, where it's like, I know why this is happening. I didn't do anything wrong. This is literally just because I'm a female between the ages of, 12 and 50, like, I'm in this age bracket. So each month I'm going to have this experience, and it's okay.
Yes.
I was just reading an article, like, where it's talking about women in training, because you guys were talking about superpower, but even this phase where you're it's almost like an active recovery a little bit.
Yep.
But they were comparing men and women in fitness, and saying a lot of times women will continue to progress where men will plateau, because men don't have this type of cycle, and they're just like, I'm going to hit it hard every time. And they end up plateauing, and they have so much accumulation of fatigue that, and they never deload. They just constant training. And so year after year, they stay about the same. They don't really change that much. But because women have the superpower, to use y'all's language, and then like a definite, like whether you like it or not, it's kind of like your body's like, it's time to deload. Okay.
It's a built-in deload.
Yeah.
I
So,
really like that,
but you,
actually.
I
you
do
have
like
that
that.
like ramping up really, really strong power deload, and there's this built-in rhythm, and women can tend to see less plateaus or stagnation, where men will, of course, men in the first couple of years, they'll really shoot up fast, but then they kind of hit that spot where they're kind of the same for the next 10 years because they never really learned to deload, to really focus on recovery. So it's interesting, in that article they mentioned women actually having the advantage in that particular thing. So that's fascinating.
That's awesome.
So what would be like, you already mentioned some, like you go into the gym and you're like, I warm up, I'm gonna do one working set. If I don't feel good, I'll take a break, I'll go for a walk or something like that.
Mhm.
What's another, like maybe one tip that you would give to a young lady who's trying to say, I'm trying to figure this out? What would be a good tip that you would give to her to try to figure this out? Like maybe something else related to like when you feel that slump.
That is a good question. I honestly think I think one would be tracking your workouts in detail so that you're able to compare. If you're tracking your workouts in detail, you're actually going to be able to see from week to week. You'll probably end up being at a point where you can point out different phases in your cycle based on
yeah.
what you were able to lift and
That's
where
smart.
your sets are at. And so if you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, this week I do feel really tired. I know what I lifted on this particular exercise last time. I know where my warm-ups were. And you're just being aware of it, I think, is the most important thing, to where you can make adjustments. And I think too, knowing I don't have to have this all figured out right now. Like I'm just starting in with working out, or I'm trying to get stronger. It's really because you're a human being and you're not a computer. Things will impact your output. There's so much that's going to impact your output.
Yes.
And you just need to take that into account and say, okay, I may not get it exactly right, but you can still, as long as you're enjoying it, and you're putting in the effort, it's worth it. You're not wasting your time. Even if you're like, oh, I feel weak this week. I don't feel like I can lift like I was last week. It's okay. It's all right. You're figuring it out, and you will. You just have to kind of trust your body and trust the process. That's what everybody says these days. Trust the process.
I like how you say this often. When you get in this phase, you'll be like, I'm just putting in the work.
Yeah.
Put in the work.
You're showing up.
And you may even like back that work down a little bit, but you're like, I'm going to move my body. I'm going to do something here.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think even I was reading something about the menstrual cycle and people really dial in the days, but even just saying, hey, sometimes it doesn't even make sense. I just feel really bad this day. Just, I guess that's like being human, right? In some ways, but learning just to read your body, but also learn to push yourself a little bit, but also when to pull back. I think you do a really good job of that. So I have one more question here for you. So if you could go back in time to your younger self and you only had one piece of advice on when it comes to fitness and health, something that you could give that would really change the trajectory of your life at that point, what would you say?
Don't try to be small.
Try to be massive.
No, I mean, depending on your body type, there are people who will never be quote unquote small, and that's not the goal. The goal is physical longevity, protecting your body from injury, protecting your, different systems within your body by activity and healthy eating and all this kind of stuff. There's so many benefits beyond just being skinny. Like skinny is the most flimsy piece of motivation if you think of like the span of a life. Like, nobody meets an impactful person. You know, nobody talks to someone that they respect and admire and who makes them feel loved and treasured and says, I really like that person. They're skinny.
Yes.
You know,
That's so solid.
That needs to be a quote.
That should be a quote.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. They care about who you are as a person. And if you are, if you're pursuing fitness to be skinny, you will quit. But like it has, my pursuit of fitness and strength and health has morphed it's morphed from I want to be as skinny as I was when I was 16. It's morphed to I want to be the most insanely active grandma you have ever met.
Facts.
I want to take my grandkids cliff jumping, you know, like hike up to the waterfall and scare my kids when I jump off the edge into the pool below.
Grandma!
Seriously, that's what I want to be able to do. I don't want to, I want to push off the age of me saying, oh, I'm just too old for that. That's my goal. And I bring that up to myself often when I am lifting, hiking, you know, going for my morning walks. I'm like, I will be the grandma who wears out the grandkids hiking through the woods. That's what I'm going to be.
I love that.
And the value in that is one, I get long-term physical health, but I also get long-term joy-filled relationships with my kids and my grandkids and all the people around me. And I can bring value to them as well as to myself in the long term. And that's something that's so much more valuable than just looking good in a photo or being able to wear a bikini. Like those things are fluff when it comes to long-term satisfaction and joy in life.
I love that.
That was a really good speech.
Thank you.
It was
Thank
good.
you for coming to my TED Talk.
I like having you on this channel. This is really fun. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I agree.
So we'll have to do this again. This will be super fun.
100%.
But thank you, everyone. Were you going to say something, Amber? Did you say something?
Nice.
Cut you off.
I was just agreeing with you.
Oh, you were agreeing. I got you. Gave me the nod. That's good. But we are so thankful that you could join us today. If you are a lady listening to this and there's some things that you have learned that just really helped you, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you have any questions for Bethany or Amber, not me, why would you ask me? But any type of questions where we could be a help to, we'd love to hear from you. Just reach out. Thank you guys so much. Hope you have a great day and we'll see you next time.